Vaccine passports are coming. Someday soon, you may need to prove your COVID status to go to the pub, travel abroad, or even go to work. Governments hope these passes could be key to kickstarting the economy and restoring basic freedoms. But could this come at a cost to individuals? The weekend is underway in Tel Aviv in Israel. Restaurants here only recently reopened from lockdown, but COVID-19 feels like a distant memory. The reason? The Green Pass, an app that lets you prove you've had the jab.
You know, as a chef, it's make me happy, like it's a huge joy. We feel like we see colors again.
Israel is winning the global vaccination race. Most over 40s are now fully vaccinated. And if you've had both jabs, the Green Pass opens doors, giving you access to restaurants, hotels, and gyms.
The movie villain is cashing in at the box office. Contagion was #1 in its opening weekend. And the people who've seen this terrifying story of a global virus are not walking out saying it's just a movie.
On day one, there were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion. That's where we're headed.
Most scary movies, you've got a monster. This is something that you can't even see.
Honey? No, stay there, Clark.
The boogeyman is, viruses. The boogeyman is disease.
It's quite possible you come in contact with an infectious disease and that you're highly contagious. Don't talk to anyone. Don't touch anyone.
It's just as scary as something, you would see with vampires or something, except I think it's even more because it's real. So I think it's one of the scariest films that came out, so see her.
Everyone coughing in the movie theater, I thought it probably wasn't a good idea to cough.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Definitely creeped out. Definitely conscious of walking out the theater and touching the door and holding it open for other people, wary of who opened it for me and who I was opening it for.
We were in the ladies' room just now kind of teasing about scrubbing up like surgeons.
It's a scary movie because it makes the possibility of a worldwide contagion that would kill millions and millions of people extremely plausible.
It will absolutely stay with me.
Jory, don't touch anything.
Help me. It was a plague. I mean, we just witnessed a plague.
Oh, the Centers for Disease Control worked very closely with the filmmakers to make this pandemic as real as possible. Could it actually happen, though? For that answer, we turn to the director of the CDC, Dr. Thomas Frieden. Good to have you with us this morning. Give us a reality check. How plausible is a scenario like the one that plays out in the film?
Actually, it is quite plausible. We're all connected by the air we breathe, by the food we eat, by the water we drink. And in fact, CDC and our partners identify about 1 new pathogen each year. We investigate about 1 new one each day, 1 new investigation each day. So something like this can happen, and even in our own lifetime. If you think about HIV, more than 25 million people have already been killed by HIV around the world.
Mm-hmm. And then we think of things like SARS, too, which seem to spread very quickly. It's a little unnerving, though, to hear you say, yes, this is absolutely plausible. You say you look at these things, you prepare for them. Could something, though, really, say, starting tomorrow, spread that quickly?
It's possible for things to spread very fast. Take just an example, the measles virus. Without vaccination, each person with measles infects about 15 other people. 1 person with measles can infect someone who's 100 feet away. And it's possible even that someone who had measles leaves a place and 4 hours later someone gets in and gets infected.
Wow.
So sure, this is possible, but what's important is that we can do a lot to prevent it, to reduce the impact as well.
So when you were approached by the filmmakers for consulting on the film to make sure they really wanted to make this as real as possible, when you see the final product, which as we mentioned you've seen twice, do you look at this as an opportunity to teach people? Or do you think it's sort of stoked more fear in people, as we heard from some of the moviegoers?
I think it's important that people understand that there are people at the local, state, federal, and global levels who are working to track what's happening so that we can prevent this from happening. There basically are a few things that we do in public health. We detect signals so that we can identify soon when a new pathogen is emerging. We figure out the laboratory aspects of it. What is it? How does it spread? And we figure out how it acts in people, so what's called the epidemiology of it, and then we figure out how to control it. We can't say that we can control everything, but we can say that we can always be better prepared today than we were yesterday and better prepared tomorrow than we were today. The challenge in this country really is that over the past 2 years, about 45,000 jobs have been lost from local public health agencies. Those were many of the people who would detect and respond to an outbreak such as this one.
All right, well, we will continue to follow this, and of course, in the interim, I think people are going to be washing their hands and using a lot more hand sanitizer. Dr. Thomas Friedman, appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thank you.
As biopharmaceutical companies like Pfizer are rolling out vaccines around the world, experts say that getting vaccinated is still the best protection against the virus. However, new data suggests that the positivity rate among fully vaccinated people who are 60 and over is actually rising, further fueling doubt that many have when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry.
Today, newly released data suggests mass vaccine rollouts have failed to stop COVID transmission. According to a medical study in The Lancet, the prevalence of the virus is increasing in fully vaccinated people. After examining new infections in Germany, researchers found that the rate of cases among fully vaccinated individuals ages 60 and older has risen from 16.9% in July to 58.9% in October. That's a 42% increase, suggesting that fully vaccinated people are a major source of COVID transmission. Throughout Britain, the number of household contacts exposed to unvaccinated cases, which was 23%, was slightly lower than the number exposed to vaccinated individuals, which was 25%. Furthermore, an outbreak in Israel that infected multiple healthcare workers and patients, as well as their family members, came from a fully vaccinated hospital patient. This at a time where most American voters don't trust major pharmaceutical companies and think that drug makers have too much influence over America's healthcare policy. A new national telephone and online survey by Rasmussen Reports finds that 53% of likely U.S. voters don't trust large pharmaceutical companies, including 19% who don't trust them at all. Only about 6% say they trust major drug makers a lot, while 36% of voters somewhat trust them.
Now, I reached out to Pfizer to get the response on both of these studies, as well as the CDC, to get their take on the transmission rates among fully vaccinated people. However, I have not heard back. For In Question, Trinity Chavez, RT New York.
Fascism. We are at a point where we can, this is a crossroads. It's an existential crossroads. And we are people who can help determine which way humanity goes. What a great gift. What a tremendous opportunity. We're just so lucky. We have to use it with every ounce of intelligence and courage and wherewithal we have, because you're absolutely right. This is it. This is it. And, you know, I just think COVID is God's gift to the left.
Microbes are microscopic organisms that we use to bake bread, brew beer, and lately engineer with synthetic DNA to create new biological systems. In this world of synthetic biology, a microbe is seen as a chassis or a structural frame to add genes and DNA. It'll get tested and have its performance improved so it can hopefully do something useful for the world. Yet this potential to modify living organisms and steer them towards global problems is often met with the dark side. It's a swing between promise and total peril, and sometimes called the half-pipe of doom. To understand why this framing exists, we have to go back to the early 2000s. The Human Genome Project was nearing the finish line, and scientists had new molecular tools to dream up promising applications. And a major terrorist attack hit New York City.
There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
In just a week's time, we have had 4 confirmed cases of anthrax, all with media connections, and a number of anthrax scares as well.
At that point, synthetic biology became a potential tool for a whole new kind of weapon.
So when most people think about a bioweapon, they think about some kind of organism. You might think about anthrax bacteria or the smallpox virus, and that is your weapon.
But turning an organism into a lethal pathogen that can do predictable harm requires more sophistication.
Not only do you have to have a pathogen, but then you have to actually know how to reliably hold it, grow it, and then determine ways that you can effectively disseminate it so that the bacteria or toxin wouldn't be destroyed.
After World War I, multiple state governments launched their own biological weapons programs as a research endeavor and stockpiling countermeasure.
And that's probably one of the most top secret pieces of our former bioweapons program, is that formulation of how you keep these things stable to survive as a weapon. These things are living organisms, so they are very finicky. In the Soviet biological weapons program, they tried to create a plague bacteria that was resistant to several different antibiotics. They created this super duper plague weapon, but actually it was a horrible weapon because it would just die. They couldn't have it survive in the environment.
With this focused experimentation, scientists ended up creating enough bioweapons to kill every person on the planet. But luckily, national governments signed a treaty to ban biological weapons. Decades later, huge investments in genetics made the tools and techniques cheaper and more accessible, enough for it to be possible to create an engineered synthetic pathogen. And that's why SynthBio and its quest to make biology easier to engineer set off alarm bells.
Free travel is happening in the age of COVID, but it hadn't yet happened here. Taiwan, with a plane load of tourists taking off Thursday as one of the world's most careful countries in this pandemic, opens its gates slightly. The destination is Palau, the small Pacific island nation that also has a stellar pandemic record, as the two countries launched the first quarantine-free travel bubble in all of Asia.
I packed a lot of clothes for water sports and things I would need for Palau's sunny weather. I haven't been to the island, and I'm looking forward to knowing more about its culture.
Travel bubbles are not new to this pandemic, but often they have proved hard to sustain. Now, the travel bubble era may be entering a new phase, the phase of the vaccine passport, where Israel has led the way. For Israel, Thursday was another milestone, as Cyprus joined the list of countries accepting vaccinated and recovered Israelis. The Israeli experiment is being closely watched. At least for international travel, governments are interested in the vaccine passport idea. European Union officials want one by summer that would show vaccines and test results.
We are providing also the possibility to receive in a digital form or on paper a real instrument without any discrimination between the different citizens.
The vaccine passport idea has obvious appeal. It will take effort to get technology and documentation that has broad buy-in. But the scene Thursday at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport could be a preview of what's to come.
We all know that we're living through challenging and troubling times. We're in the midst of a pandemic. Cities and whole countries are being locked down for months on end. People are losing their lives, their jobs and their businesses. Mental illness and suicide are on the rise, and the debt that is being built up will take generations to pay off. Censorship and polarisation seem to be the new norm, with nuanced debate and mutual respect giving way to a pro versus anti, with us or against us mentality that has a chilling and deeply divisive effect on our previously open and tolerant societies. But far more disturbing than any of these troubling things is that we stand on the brink of a civilisational change that is so far-reaching in its consequences and so profound in its implications that few are able to discern the imminence of the danger or to fully comprehend the Rubicon that we are about to cross and the dystopian world that awaits us on the other side. How is this fundamental change being ushered into being, you ask? Through sleight of hand, through misdirection, and through the introduction of the seemingly benign vaccine passport. Such a claim seems extraordinary, and you would be right to be sceptical. But please allow me to explain. Most of us living in democratic societies today have been born into freedom. We've simply never known anything different. Now, liberal democratic societies are certainly not perfect, but we are essentially free to live the lives we choose, go where we please and behave as we wish, except where our actions are expressly prohibited in law, such as stealing, committing acts of violence or taking another's life. But we've not earned the freedoms we've enjoyed. They've been handed down to us by successive generations who wrestled them from the hands of monarchs and tyrants, who campaigned, fought and died so that we could enjoy the freedoms that we now possess to live the lives we choose. Yet today we stand on the brink of having these priceless, hard-fought freedoms stolen from us as we look the other way, of relinquishing them without resistance or debate because we are told we have no choice but to accept vaccine passports if we want to get some semblance of our old lives back. At first glance, accepting vaccine passports into our daily lives may seem like a trivial change. After all, many of us have already become accustomed to scanning QR codes as a condition of entry into restaurants and shops. But do not be fooled. The universal adoption of vaccine passports is not a trivial change. It is no less than a fundamental inversion of what is meant by freedom in democratic societies, and it will facilitate a radical restructuring of our civilization. No longer will your personal freedom be expansive, constrained only at the periphery by long established and mutually agreed laws. Instead, what will remain of your freedom will be limited to those things that you've been given explicit permission to do by some unseen algorithmic power mediated through the screen of your smartphone, one green tick at a time. Let me say this again, for it is critically important to understand. Today, we are essentially free to do anything we choose except where our actions are prohibited in law. However, after the introduction of vaccine passports, that concept of freedom will be consigned to history, replaced by a completely new system in which you will only be allowed to do the things that you've been given explicit permission to do. This is what I mean by a fundamental inversion of freedom. Almost overnight, our enshrined and protected freedoms will become mere privileges, temporarily granted to us for compliance and good behaviour. Can I go into this restaurant, this concert, this sporting event? Can I get on this bus, this plane or in this taxi? Can I go into this shop, this doctor's surgery or even into my place of work? Participation in such trivial day-to-day activities will be contingent on permissions granted to us via our smartphones, permissions which themselves will be liable to change from one day to the next. And don't think for a second that because you are now double vaccinated this won't apply to you. Australia, a country of under 26 million people, has recently signed contracts to secure a further 195 million vaccine doses on top of the millions of doses already purchased. That's about a booster shot every 6 months for the next 4 years. So in a couple of years from now, if you are 2 days late getting your booster shot for the latest COVID variant, you might as well forget that dinner with friends at your favourite restaurant. Those privileges will have been automatically revoked. And it won't stop there. Vaccine passports are just a Trojan horse. Behind the seemingly benign functional facade lays a digital ID scheme built on a software platform that is designed to be extended over time. Today you'll just get a simple binary green tick or red cross indicating your authorised inclusion or exclusion from everyday society. But tomorrow you'll be rated on every aspect of your life. Points added for behaviour deemed supportive of the government and big business. Points subtracted for anything deemed to be divergent from the required norms. So how many times did you inadvertently break the 1.5 metre social distancing rule today? What about that mildly critical post on social media about some government policy? What about that video you shared with a friend raising legitimate questions about the current approved narrative? Watch your social credit score tumble, and as it does, your access to the services essential for everyday life revoked, one privilege at a time. This sounds extreme, but the social credit system is already a reality in China, where people can't even board a train if their score falls below a certain threshold. Make no mistake, this is coming soon and to the entire world, and it's coming hidden in the vaccine passport Trojan horse. While such a world may seem implausible to us, if we stop and reflect for just a moment, it becomes clear that COVID-19 has already given us a taste of a world where what is permitted, and with it the boundaries of our freedom, changes on a day-to-day basis. The desensitisation has already begun. Although this vision of our imminent future is shocking enough, The true dystopian power of such a scheme only comes into view when we situate the vaccine passport digital ID platform in the context of the high-tech, highly surveilled world we already live in. It's no secret to anyone that the global tech giants monitor and record our every online action, with each post liked, every article shared, ad clicked and video watched, used to build detailed profiles on us. These big data generated psychographic profiles are not only used to determine what products we may want to buy, but also, more chillingly, to infer our political preferences, our opinions, attitudes and beliefs, and even our innermost drives and fears. It really can be argued that, armed with big data, AI algorithms and near infinite computing power, Google, Facebook and Amazon really can know us better than we know ourselves. Furthermore, after Edward Snowden's revelations about the NSA's illegal and ubiquitous surveillance programs in the US, working hand in glove as they did with their Five Eyes partners in the UK, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, most reasonably informed people know that governments collect and store vast quantities of data on their citizens, including almost all telephone calls, text messages and emails. Every aspect of our lives today is monitored, scrutinised and profiled as part of the national security apparatus of the state or the for-profit apparatus of big business. To date, the Faustian bargain that we've made with big tech seems to result in little more than a gentle nudge here and there from an online ad or an eerily accurate Amazon recommendation to purchase something that we didn't even know we wanted. However, this will all change, and change forever, if we allow the vaccine passports to roll out. Why? Because the vaccine passport and the social credit system it will rapidly evolve into is the final missing piece in an automated architecture of total surveillance and social control. George Orwell has made us all familiar with the watching and monitoring aspect of surveillance, and we all intuitively know that the act of being watched puts pressure on us to conform to certain rules and norms. Think speed cameras on the roads and CCTV cameras in shops and town centres. But there is another aspect of surveillance that, apart from the occasional speeding fine, few of us have experienced, and that is the disciplinary aspect of surveillance, the punishment for non-compliance that's received at the sharp end of the surveillance architecture. Until now, that piece of the puzzle has been missing, but with the advent of vaccine passports, the mechanism to automatically discipline those who do not submit to prescribed norms and mandated rules will be carried in everyone's pocket every moment of every day. There is a term that's used in the academic discussions on surveillance known as turnkey totalitarianism. This is the idea that the surveillance infrastructure for a totalitarian system has been constructed around us, but it has not yet been switched on. The machine is ready, but the key has not yet been turned. Vaccine passports are the last part of that infrastructure, the last cog in the machine. They are the disciplinary sharp end of the totalitarian system of surveillance and control. Once we allow this final, critical part of the infrastructure to be slotted into place, once we accept it as just a normal part of daily life, the key will be turned, the Rubicon will be crossed, and there will be no going back. There will be no space for dissent, no opportunity for debate, and no room for deviance from prescribed norms and mandated behaviours. And as the crucially important space for debate, difference and non-conformity disappears, so too will the possibility of ordinary human beings collectively steering the direction we want our societies to go in. The machine will be on, eternally and automatically watching, profiling and scoring, guiding our behaviours and, when necessary, punishing. We will be forever at the mercy of our masters, those with the key to the machine, those who keep score and those who set the rules, those who decide if we are deserving of a green tick or a red cross, those who decide whether we can be included in society or pushed to the precarious margins of existence. If we allow this to happen, it will be, as Aldous Huxley termed it, the final revolution. There will be no coming back from it. Freedom, as we have known it all our lives and for generations before us, will be extinguished forever for all but the privileged few at the pinnacle of the pyramid. In time, maybe in a generation or two, we will be so conditioned by the continuous gaze of surveillance and the rewards and punishments that it will automatically issue that we'll simply police ourselves, self-monitored, self-censored and submissive. The freedom we enjoy today, even the very idea of freedom as we conceive it now, will become all but unthinkable to our children and all the generations that follow. It is said that totalitarianism is, first and foremost, the extreme focusing of surveillance devoted to securing political ends. Under the cover of COVID-19, without debate, discussion or informed consent, we're about to let a new totalitarian world of total surveillance, control and compliance be ushered in, welcomed by many in the name of doing their part in the battle against the virus. It is tempting to think that those of us living today in our high-tech, media-saturated world are far too informed and far too smart to have such a trick played on us. Yes, people may have fallen under the spell of fascism and totalitarianism in the past, but we are simply far too sophisticated to fall into such a trap. But is that really true? Are you sure? Look around you. Look at the censorship. Look at how little deviance there is from the approved narrative on the mainstream media. Look at how fear is being used to corral and control us. Look at how we are becoming divided around the ideas of masks, vaccines and lockdowns. Look at the in-group, out-group mentality that's beginning to form. Look at how far we've come in less than 2 short years. When the scales are peeled from your eyes, the propaganda and control become all too clear. The destination laid bare for those willing to see. Given the gravity of what I'm suggesting, I ask you now to pause for a moment and consider this. For centuries, perhaps millennia, the torch of freedom has been passed from generation to generation, often paid for with blood. The flames of that torch fanned by the hands it passed through. Those of us alive today who are fortunate enough to live in democratic societies now hold that torch. Now imagine yourself looking into the eyes of your parents, your grandparents and all the generations before them stretching back through time. Look at all those who gave their lives so that we might live free, who fought, who campaigned, who protested, who faced down despots so that individual liberty could be secured for them and for their descendants. Are you willing to look them in the eyes and tell them that you let the torch go out forever because of a virus? That you let the flame die because you were too fearful, too apathetic, too trusting or too easily manipulated to stand firm, stand tall and keep the flame alive? Now imagine yourself looking forward in time and bring to mind all your descendants, your children and your grandchildren, be they living or yet to come, and all those generations that will follow us. Look them in the eyes and tell them that the gift of freedom was handed down to us, but we allowed it to be taken from us and hence from them because we didn't see the sleight of hand trick that was being played, or if we did nothing to stop it. Can you feel the weight of responsibility that rests upon your shoulders now? Will you be able to live with the shame of knowing that you were one of those who stood idle, locked down, cowered in your home as the precious gift of freedom through sleight of hand, manipulation and misdirection was stolen from you and from all future generations to come? It should not matter where we find ourselves on the political spectrum, what our views are on masks, vaccines and lockdowns, whether we are rich or poor, or even if we are in the police or the military. We may disagree on many things, but surely we can all agree on this, that the freedom we enjoy today is the most precious of gifts, that it has been passed down to us and that it must be cherished, nurtured and defended at all costs for the generations to come. It should be clear by now that the vaccine passport, COVID pass, green pass or however they choose to brand it has absolutely nothing to do with your health. And despite how it's being sold to us, its global rollout is not the way we will get our old lives back. In fact, the reverse is true. Vaccine passports are the perfectly engineered gateway for creating a completely new type of controlled and surveilled society, the likes of which we have never seen before. Therefore, under no circumstances, no matter what pressure is applied to us, must we allow vaccine passports to be introduced. Make no mistake, we stand at a pivotal moment in history, like the Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae or the young men and boys on the beaches of Normandy. The true scale of what is at stake cannot be overstated, but this is not a message of fear and division. This is a message of hope, and it is a message of unity. I share this as my way of sounding the alarm, of calling attention to the imminent danger we all face. We are born free, sovereign beings on this beautiful earth. We are all brothers and sisters. We are one human family regardless of colour, creed or nationality. No weapons need be forged, no ramparts stormed, no buildings raised. We simply need to stand up, to stand united and say enough is enough. We've seen through the tricks. We see the plan clearly now. and we will not allow our freedom to be taken from us. The torch of liberty will not be extinguished, not now, not ever, and certainly not on our watch. Our moment has come to defend it for all future generations, to fan its flames and to pass it on intact and invigorated to the generations that follow us. To our descendants we must say, in unison, we will not let you down. If this message resonates with you, I ask you to share it with your family and friends, for the time to act is now.
Iran's rulers promised to destroy my country, murder my people, and the response from this body, the response from nearly every one of the governments represented here, has been absolutely nothing. Utter silence. Deafening silence.